Hi, friend.
Hi, friend.
And to the brave hearts listening out there, welcome to Permission to be Human. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Janelle.
Get ready for some real-time relationship woo and wisdom
from the front lines with occasional tantrums and tears
about how breaking rules, blurring boundaries, and tossing tradition can be catalysts for finding your truth.
Let's debunk the fairy tales we were told as children and create a new map for life.
Yes, Disney can go fuck itself.
If you're seeking permission to choose your own path,
freedom is the new F word, people,
and want to feel less alone along the way,
we got you.
Please note, this is our side of the story. Our partners and metamours have their own individual experiences, and we do not speak for them. Hey, Andrea.
Hi, Janelle.
This week is marking the 1-year anniversary of when my partner and I filed for divorce. When I just think about that, wow. When we say how time changes and time heals, it's hard to believe the state I am in now compared to the state I was in a year ago.
Wow.
But last night, I was on my way home. I was at a course in Jersey City, New Jersey, and I ended up getting a UTI. And I realized it at 5 p.m. last night. I was heading to the airport, or 5 p.m. Colorado time, but I was on the East Coast. And I was like, shit. I'm traveling. I need to get my medicine. Called the doctor, on-call nurse. They called in the prescription. I had them called into Colorado because the Walgreens in Colorado was still open. The Walgreens in New Jersey was already closed. But then I was like, oh, I thought I called the 24-hour pharmacy, but it actually wasn't 24 hours. It's actually 6 till 6 p.m. on Sunday, opens at 8 a.m. on Monday. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So I called Andrea, who was just lounging around on a Sunday evening. One thing you should also know, brave hearts, is we actually never call each other.
Never. We Vox and we text.
Yes. So this was she happened to pick up her phone and she was like, what's wrong? I'm like, I have a UTI. Can you go right now? It's 30 minutes before the pharmacy closes to get this medicine and then drop it off at my house so that when I land at 1 a.m. that I can take it straight away.
Yeah. So I had my Christmas onesie on, which I also have on right now. And I put on a baseball cap and my knee-high Uggs and went to Walgreens looking really ridiculous. And the funny thing is that on the way there, I'm like, oh, what is her birthday? And I knew it was her birthday, but I didn't really know the year. Anyway, she told me. But even when I went there, I knew her birthday. And then they're like, so what's the physical address? And I'm like, I don't know. It's on Gilpin. I know it's north of 17, but I didn't know her address. And then they're like, what's the last 4 digits of her phone number? I'm like, I don't know. Let me look that up. But they gave it to me anyway. Yeah. So I dropped it off and
I took it. And it was in mentioning the story because in light of being this topic and talking about what I've learned this past year about marriage, about divorce, about myself, survival, money. One of the things I've learned is I've really, really expanded my view of what partnership is because my partnership used to be defined by here's who my husband is. And this year I've had this beautiful expansion. I really can't think of another urgent 911 call that I have placed this year that was like, oh my gosh, I need this medicine. Can you go right now? And the fact that I have you to call to me is the definition of a partner, a life partner. That's the mundane shit that you're willing to get off your couch from watching Christmas movies on a Sunday night. The only thing you're doing is going to get drugs for me to help my medical condition. And that's partnership. That is love. That is the most unromantic, deeply felt, heartwarming love and gift you could give me. And I'm so appreciative.
Yay. I'm so happy to do that and so excited to be able to serve you in that way and know that you can. Who said it? It's one of the chief feminists from circa the 1900s that said it's the friends that you can call at 4 a.m. that matter. It's an old quote. Yeah, maybe it was Gloria Steinem. I'm not sure. But yes, we are that for each other.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, that was a moment we made. That was part of this year was realizing, oh, I'm changing my emergency contact information.
Right. On all your medical forms.
Yes.
And I came and picked you up from your colonoscopy too.
Right. That's right. And so brave hearts, and I want you to know, and you'll hear, I actually still have a great relationship with my former husband, but this isn't the shit that I want to bother him with because I want to kind of keep my
resilience, independence.
No, it's not that. If you hadn't been able to do it and I couldn't have called an Uber, then I maybe would have called him. But I want to really reserve that for like, okay, there's no other options. Yeah, because that's still gently being formed. But I know I could call him if there was nobody else. But it was really nice that you picked up the phone.
Yay. I'm so glad that worked out. And I just want to say quick that I just read last week, I believe it was Johanna Lynn, a woman in my pod, who said that it is recorded that December 11th is by far the most common day that people get divorced. Yes, it's just a random fact that she said something about the end of the year, finally coming to terms, the holidays closing in.
Wow. Fascinating.
I know. And I was thinking, it was also this week for you. I mean,
yeah, we decided, I think, on December 11th, and we filed on December 14th. It was that quick. Or maybe it was like a week before, but it was that week.
Yeah, so fascinating.
Yes.
So where should we start? I think we were going to ask, what did you learn about yourself by getting divorced?
Where to begin? Well, the first thing to note, I'm on the other side of a decision that I never thought that I would make. For those brave hearts who need a refresher, I waited until I was 45 to get married because I had decided I wasn't going to get married until I knew I found the person who I wasn't going to get divorced from. Which when I wrote this down, I was like, wow. And we talked about this in one of our episodes, that it's such an interesting way to go about choosing how to get married. But I also was waiting until I knew myself. And I felt like I was a fully formed adult when I went into that relationship. And surprise, I didn't know myself before getting married, but that I learned as much about myself in that marriage, which was from 45 to 48, as I had in my first 45 years of my life. That's how I view it now. And I would venture to say that I've learned as much about myself in the 1 year since the divorce as I did in the 3.5 years we were married. Being in relationship for me, because I had been single most of my life, I'd had, different boyfriends and stuff, but nothing particularly serious. And so my husband was the deepest, richest relationship that I had had, and still to this day, and probably will be like the most impactful person on my life other than my parents, because of how much I learned about myself simply by being in a relationship with him.
Yeah. But it's hard to say, isn't it? Because you would have said something totally different before him, and you still have many, many decades left.
I do. But I do feel that there is... Okay, so I'll name this about myself. I know I'm going to keep changing, for sure. I've raised my hand for that kind of life. And there is something about having come home to myself that this relationship helped me do, that whatever future relationships that I have, I am choosing based on a truth that's already in me versus the truth of more than society's conditioning and what it's supposed to look like. I agree. I likely have many decades left. And there is still something about how I feel at this moment in my life that I've now come home to myself in a way that wasn't true when we got married, that now whoever I am with in my future, my foundation is much more solid and much more true for me.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. I hear it was pretty big. And I know you were in a polyamorous partnership with your ex-partner. And what about now?
I would call myself solo poly. And what that means to me is that I'm choosing myself first. And then from that place, I'm choosing others.
Let's just let that sink in for a second. You're choosing yourself first. And from that place, you're choosing others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can relate to that and feel it. And feel like it is a dance for me still. I'm choosing myself, but then I'm also looking outside. No, I'm choosing myself. Oh no, I'm looking outside. And so getting to that sturdiness that I think you just described is quite a feat.
Yes. I feel very sturdy. And I guess that is a feat. So what getting divorced has done for me has broken or split open this idea that one person is everything. And in this way, I have me. But just like I described earlier about the prescription pickup, that, my definition of partnership has expanded. Like, what if I meet someone else and I go into a partnership with them? Does that mean I stop calling you for help? I don't know that I would. The depth of relationship I have now cultivated, especially this year. Well, I've always done this with women, but like it really feels like between you and my friend May and my friend Touch, these are like women I talk to on a daily basis, all providing me something different, but that are all partners in life with me at this moment. And that I'm looking for someone who's a spiritual tantric lover of mine, a male. I'm definitely calling that in. But I actually feel like I'm not looking for someone to get married to. I feel like I actually found my person, and I had my wedding day, which was amazing. And I had the most perfect wedding dress, which was great. I still wear my wedding ring on my right hand now, meaning that I've chosen myself. I've kept my married last name because that ties me to that family and to my stepson. And it still ties me to my ex-husband. We are still partners in this life together, but as neighbors and chosen family. And so the container of marriage no longer has any appeal for me. There is no mystery or, oh, something's better on that side. Oh, there's a greater commitment on that side. Oh, if we walk down the aisle. I have completely let go of that for myself. And in this way, I recognize now that when I'm looking for someone to be with, I'm actually not looking for a husband, and I'm not looking for them to take care of me from a financial perspective. I've got me on that front. And so I have no idea who's going to come into my field now that I've let go of what they're supposed to look like to such a degree.
I'm hearing that you don't need a provider. You're seeking an energetic connection rather than a concrete or physical or career or financial. And you're seeking from a very different perspective than you were.
Certainly for the first part of my life. I'm not saying I'm not looking for a provider. I think that is a really deep attribute of the masculine, is that they provide. But do they have to be responsible for my entire financial being? No. But will they provide something for me in lots of ways? Yes. But in terms of my financial security, I'm not looking for someone else to make my life more financially abundant.
Okay. I've been hearing lately from a couple friends of mine that divorce is for the rich. It's complicated to pay for 2 houses, to have 2 health insurances. Everything is split, and yet you're still sometimes tied together. Now, both of my friends have kids, and so it's much different for children. But still, I am curious, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like financially to go through divorce?
Yes. And I would say the logistics of our situation, which was that we were only married for 3.5 years. We did not have young children. We had a prenup, and we were getting divorced in Colorado amicably without lawyers. All of those things made our divorce actually very affordable, the logistics of choosing to get divorced. But living alone is more expensive. And in my case, in Colorado, it's 90 days before the divorce is finalized, is the minimum amount of time. But we decided, mid-December of last year, that I was going to move next door into the other half of the duplex. I was going to be responsible for all of my finances at that moment, and we were just going to act as if we were divorced from that moment on. So as of January 1, I was in a hustle mode. I had to figure out how to make money and pay for the rent of the goddess temple. And Spirit was definitely telling me to move next door into the goddess temple. But my human was also totally freaked out about how much this place costs. And brave hearts for you to know, there's 2 times that I have been in debt in my life. One was college loans. And then the first year after I bought my house when I was 26. I have never carried a balance on a credit card in my life. But in that moment of December of last year, my marketing company was in debt for the first time in my 8 years of owning it. And suddenly, with the rent and the furnishing of the goddess temple, I had by far, the highest expenses that I've ever had in my life. I was starting a new career as a tantrika and a desire coach, and I was in deep listening and trust to the divine that I would figure this out. And I felt like I would be able to. Nonetheless, I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make a bunch of money, and then I'm going to put it on a credit card right now. And then by second quarter, I will be starting to pay off my credit card debt.
I hear 2 things. You set up a timeline, and you had to go from I'm not the kind of person that accrues debt, to, oh, I'm going to accrue a lot of debt.
A lot of debt.
That's hard.
And it's credit card debt. Like it's the worst kind of debt, right? That I've been taught my whole life. And it was really scary. I was like kind of grinding, traveling, figuring out a lot of things and going into debt and questioning. Because I also had my old house, this house that I just talked about, the one that I bought when I was 26. I still owned that. And I could have made the choice to go move back into that. Again, me listening to Spirit was like, that doesn't seem correct. That doesn't seem correct. What it felt correct was that the goddess temple was actually asking me to rise. It was like demanding me to up level my skill set, my financial abundance, my threshold of what I needed in this world in order to make a bigger impact in this world. And in this way, I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Like I'm making money, not for myself. I'm making money because the goddess temple needs to exist. And so I'm figuring out how I can have the goddess temple exist.
Wow. Yeah, it makes me anxious just listening to you. And I remember when you were going through it and you were telling me, and I was just like, why don't you think you should move into your other house? Like, doesn't that make more sense? Like the difference in the mortgage is like, you don't even want to know, Bravehearts. Like
It's like 3 times more.
Yeah.
4 times more. 4 times more.
But she's like, no, supposed to stay in the goddess temple.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I support you.
Yes. And so what happened though was that my arbitrary timeline was definitely not going to be followed. Like by end of Q1, I was like, oh, I'm still definitely accruing. My expenses are way higher than my income. But this is when I had my Indian palm leaf reading, which if you listen to the All the Woo That's Crazy and True episode, I talk about this. And really what I think about when I think about this year is like, where did the mindset shifts happen that have completely changed how I view myself, marriage, the world? And getting divorced in and of itself required a massive mindset shift that was even possible. This Indian palm leaf reading was the next one that, if nothing else is true, what they said was these next 2 years, your expenses are going to be higher than your income. And you're going to be learning a lot. Think of it as your education. And I have to tell you, that was an hour-and-a-half reading that I left and I was like, oh, yeah. I've never gotten my master's because I love learning, but I was like, I don't know what I'd go back to school for. Like, what would I be willing to go into debt for? And I'd considered going for an MBA. I'd considered getting law school. And at this moment, it was like, oh no, I know exactly what I would be learning. And I'm going to invest in those workshops, learning how to do tantra work and be a desire coach and figure out how to be in service through the goddess temple is all things I'm willing to go into debt for when I view it through the lens of this is education. And if I had gone for a master's, I would have been in debt for 2 years and then I would have, paid that off. And I was like, okay. So I suddenly went from my arbitrary deadline of I have 3 months to figure my whole shit out, my whole life out after it just completely got turned upside down to, oh, no, it's probably going to take me a couple of years and I'm going to stop hustling.
So this is all in Q1.
This is actually March 31st, last day of Q1.
Wow.
That's when I had that reading. So I ended up going straight into Q2 of like, okay, I can breathe again. I'm still in debt. Like nothing changed about the amount of debt that I had or the expenses that I had, but I was breathing more. And I was like, okay, I am now going to make sure that I'm investing in my radiance and in my spaciousness and in the things that help me be in service to the goddess temple, to my clients, to my family. Massive mindset shift.
Beautiful. Then you went to ISTA.
And I went to ISTA. Yes. My 5th and final ISTA was in Q2, May of this year. So at that workshop, it felt like my soul and my personality clicked into alignment. This is like a spiritual perspective. And I came out of that retreat with like deep clarity of who I am, what I'm here to do. The next workshop presented itself, and then the next workshop, and the next workshop. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I went to Finland for the Feminine Mysteries. I signed up for the Wheel of Consent. I signed up for a Kadoshka workshop. And all of this was like, yes, this is all in service to what I'm going to be doing with the Goddess Temple. These are the skills that I'm aware of, but I need to like dive deeper into.
Beautiful. And Bravehearts, there's an episode about the feminine mystery workshop in Finland and about the Wheel of Consent.
Yeah, and learning how to ask for what you want.
And then quarter 3 came with your annual Burning Man trip.
Yes. And at Burning Man and through a psychic reading that I had, so quarter 3 was embodied by recognizing that I am the goddess temple. It's actually not just this space. It's not just this building. I actually had a psychic reading and she said, I hear you keep saying, calling the goddess temple as if it's outside of you. She's like, but wherever you are, the goddess temple is. And that phrase really landed. I was like, oh, okay, that's my gift for Burning Man. You go to Burning Man, you have gifts for people. So I gathered up all my altar items and created what I call goddess sessions and went through the burn and the playa, giving goddess sessions as the goddess temple. And you can listen to the episode on Burning Man to learn more about that. And that really helped me embody more all of these things that I'm talking about so far. Like I just felt myself like shedding, oh, who am I supposed to be? What is this supposed to look like? What's the world like? What's my life supposed to look like? What's my relationship supposed to look like? All of these were just like taking off layers and layers.
Beautiful. So what happened in quarter 4?
Quarter 4 has been a doozy, just like all of the others in terms of mindset shifts. A workshop, like a long-term container that I ended up signing up for is called the Modern Priestess of Eros. And it's a BDSM pro-dom course, which I was like, not at all on my radar that I was going to be taking that course.
So not you.
So not me in every way. Until, again, and like a deep listening to spirit was like, oh, you're supposed to take this course. And I did. And in the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, this is so me. I had no understanding of BDSM. It's like the most misunderstood, incredibly potent, powerful, somatic healing modality that I have ever come across. And it's, yes. So that's happening. I'm learning all about myself and how to be a dom through that. But then the other big thing that happened is it feels like I freed myself from my financial limiting beliefs. So 4th quarter, Bravehearts, I'm still in a lot of debt, but I figured out, and this is like a tip for everyone, is that I've been investing in a Roth IRA retirement plan since 2009. And I learned that I could take money out of my retirement fund to pay off credit card debt. As long as you're only taking out your contributions, you can't take out your earnings, like in the interest that you've earned on that money. And you can take your contributions out, since it's, in my case, it's a Roth IRA, without penalties, without fees. And again, back to mindset shift, like talk about failure. Oh my gosh, I'm taking out my retirement money to pay up credit card debt. I'm such a bad person is one way I could have viewed that. And then the more I looked at that, I was like, this is actually what makes sense. I'm making much less on the earnings from the retirement than I'm paying in interest on the credit card debt. So I did that. So I pulled the money out. It was going to be an even wash, like retirement money, credit card debt, and that would be free and clear. But then we figured out that the construction project on the goddess temple in the backyard and the garage ended up being $35K over budget for my side. And I found this out 2 days after I had pulled the money out of my account. And so I hadn't paid off the credit card debt yet. So when my ex-partner was like, hey, like this is what's happening, I was able to be like, okay, give me a day to digest that. And I came back to him and was like, okay, here's the money. And I didn't pay off my credit card debt, or I didn't pay off all of it. But what was so fucking profound for me was that had he told me this 2 weeks prior, before I knew I could take out my retirement money, I would have freaked out. I know the amount of constriction, I can like almost feel it, how I would have been like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm taking my retirement money out to pay for a garage. Like that seems ridiculous. And yet the way that the universe layered and layered and layered all of the things into it, I was like, oh, what I'm actually paying for right now when I give him this $35K is to be in ease and relationship with him going forward for the rest of my life. Is what it feels like. He didn't have to hear me freak out. He didn't have to feel like, oh my gosh, he's got to cover it, or he's responsible. He's got to cover it until I can figure it out. I was just like, oh, here you go. And I'll see you tomorrow. And the ease in my system regarding that much money with him feels like it was an investment for the rest of my life.
I hear that you've really come to a place of peace with him, and this money was part of it. Can you talk a little bit more about your emotional process with your ex-partner and how it resolved and what it's like now?
It's still unfolding. I don't think we're done. But I would say that the first quarter, we didn't really talk at all. And I would say we were both kind of grieving, licking our wounds, like adjusting to what just happened. And over time, the more work I did in myself, I just recognized like how much I had hurt him. And I think for me, in divorce or in ending of any relationship, I strongly believe that it's two people who make a relationship and who ultimately break a relationship. So I was like, okay, well, what's my part? Because I knew that if I didn't look at my part, I would probably like repeat that going into the next relationship that I was in. And one of the things that I realized is that the recognition that he knew when he chose to love me and marry me, that he was also choosing hurt. He did not and never had fallen for the Disney fairy tale. I was able to really see his love and commitment for the very first time. And I felt the grief and the shame in me when I saw all the ways I had hurt him, saying he didn't love me. And now I know I realized it was me who could not receive the love that he was giving because I hadn't fully chosen myself. I ended up, this was in third quarter, seeing all of that and acknowledging that with him, and was able to like create a gift and create a ceremony and say all that to him. You know, his commitment to me from very early on when we started dating, we were not even talking about marriage at all, was that he would support me being the brightest version of me and that he would always be willing to take me to the hospital. When he first told me that, I didn't think that was very romantic. I now see it as the deepest kind of love. I'm not alone.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
As neighbors, we're still supporting each other with the little household tasks, watering plants, borrowing sugar, which is incredibly freeing.
What do you mean?
It's these little things that can just be like the thorn in the day. Like I forgot to water the plants and I'm gone for a week, and now who's going to water the plants? And just being able to have someone say, hey, can you just go do that for me? There's an ease and a freedom to being able to rely on others. And so in this way, it's not a freedom of independence, like, oh, I'm going at it alone. It's a freedom of recognizing I don't have to be alone.
Yeah, so I hear you that you're asking for help when you need it, recognizing you don't need to be alone. And I do think there's a sense from a couple of people I know gone through divorce that it was in fact them and their partner against the world. And there's an adjustment period where they're now like, oh, it's just me. And it doesn't have to be just you. But right away you think, oh, well, everyone else is married, or like you're constantly surrounded by people who are in partnership. And that's a hard reality to face. And it feels like, no, it's just me. I'm alone.
Yeah. And I think that that's this other shift by releasing my definition, or rather expanding my definition of what partnership is supposed to look like. Then I went from like having one husband to having many partners. I still consider him a partner in this life that I'm on. I consider you a partner, and Touch and May, and even Anastasia, who lives in New York, who I can still call every now and again. Like I have all these people, and I have my spirit son, and I have my sister-in-law.
Yeah. And I think where some of the rub can come in for someone who is in your position is that not everyone is surrounded by other people who have that same mentality.
What's the mentality?
The mentality that they can be partners with someone who they're not married to.
I didn't know that I could.
I know. Yeah. I'm all for it. And if your circles are a little more traditional than you are.
Right. If there's a lot of judgment.
The position I'm in. Not judgment. No, I'm not talking about judgment. Just a lot of people are they're situated in a culturally conditioned spot, but they're not thinking of themselves as my partner for life. Even though they'd help me if I needed it. If someone else is married, they're still like, I live with this person. This is the person I do things with. You know, there's a more traditional form and definition of marriage. And so I think it's sometimes about finding different people who also have the same attitude that you do.
In our culture right now, we have really highly valued the individual and have undervalued community and
Agreed.
the collective.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other cultures in other time periods, marriage might still have been the institution, but it wasn't like, oh, there's just these two people against the world. There was still a village or a community, or I'm just thinking of like the blocks, like in New York where everyone sat on their porch, right? And you knew everyone in the neighborhood. And so like the kids could go into any house and feel safe. So much of that fabric has disintegrated in our culture, certainly depending on where you live. That's what I feel I've done is that, and it just wasn't this year. I've been doing this over time. Is like, oh, I am like, you didn't go to the Walgreens last night without having felt like I've given something to you. Like there's a dynamic between us. Like there's a commitment that goes both ways. It may not show up the exact same way. And I think that that's actually another thing that I've learned is that how I rely on you for support may be different than how you rely on me for support. That's why like having more people is like, oh, not everyone can do everything. And I totally agree with you that if you can be surrounded by people who respect you for your decisions, for how you're choosing to live your life, who are willing to like go in deep with you, ask you questions, even if they aren't going to live the life that you're living, if they just have like the curiosity and then they bring that to you and the compassion for like what you're going through, that's really meaningful to me. And I'm so, so grateful that I am surrounded by that all the time. And I do agree that that is unique. I think I'm actually, even though I'm surrounded by people like this, I'm unique even in the people that I'm surrounded by in how much community I have, possibly because I'm a single person who doesn't have young kids. There's something in me about that, but I'm not sure.
And I loved what you said about the different ways that we show up for people, the way that we show our love. I often think about that. And like for you, maybe I'll bring you lunch or I'll leave a sticker for you or I'll send you something or bring something for your house. And these are the little ways I'm showing up for you. Go to Walgreens. And because of our lifestyle differences, the way that you're showing up for me is like easing my anxiety, being positive, being this force of life.
And introducing you to things that you wouldn't have, that your circles wouldn't have crossed paths with, right? Like choir, for example.
Exactly. So there's different ways we contribute to each other's lives. And I'm doing the things that are in ease for me and you're doing the things that are in ease for you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a natural giving. Like for me, it's like, I have soup, I'll bring it to you. You just got home from your travels, you have no food in the fridge. So this just is easy for me. And for you, it's easy because you're already doing these new things. And you're just like, oh, Andrew, you should check this out. These are the ways that we give it to each other. Just one example.
And I do think we can get stuck. I learned this lesson actually many, many years ago. I remember being able to accept people for where they're at. I would be disappointed if I wanted you to give to me what I gave to you because you're not doing experiences that I'm like, oh, like that's like that, right? Just as one simple example. And yet I had a conversation with a friend the other day where like there was disappointment because she's like, I'm such a good friend and this person isn't showing up for me in that way. And I was like, but in this particular way, I'm showing up. This other friend would show up a totally different way for you. She totally is committed to showing up for you, but not in the way you need right now. And so being able to discern who can show up for you in the way you need at that moment and not judge those who don't fit that bill is also part of the experience.
Definitely part of the process. And this taps into something I'm going through recently, which also goes back to my husband. He's showing up for me in all the ways that he can. And I know now, and I've learned that it's almost unfair in the same way that like his skin is white and I want it to be black. That doesn't work. He is one way. This is how he shows his love. Sure, he can always work on things, but he definitely knows these 4 areas. And that's where he gives. That's where he chooses. That's where he offers. And I have learned to receive that with ease.
And I would say that ties back to my relationship, which was that my ex-husband showed me so much love, but I had a hard time receiving it in the ways that he was giving it because I was saying I want it in these other ways.
Yes, Same. And I have learned that, back to your original statement, that he can't be my everything. Now, that may mean I need another romantic partner, or it may mean I just need other friends. And I think this is a really great way to start thinking about your own life. How do different people show up for you? And thinking about what's missing right now for you.
I would also like to tie into but what is there that maybe you overlooked, in the sense that I believe that divorce was correct for us. But my husband ex-husband is one of the smartest people I know, the most capable, the most talented on a wide range of subjects. And if shit went down, I am so glad to be on his team, because he knows a lot about a lot and is good with his hands, making things, solving. I mean, he's an unbelievable problem solver. All of these things.
He built a fucking respirator in the beginning of COVID, didn't he?
I don't remember. Maybe. Yes. He was looking into that.
I'm like, what?
If I was to walk away to say, okay, we're not married any longer. We don't have kids together. We don't need to ever see each other again. Yes, there's lots of things that were really hard about our relationship. And there were so many things that were also really great. And I bet you that's true for most of us who get divorced. And yes, I'm saying, okay, these parts, I need to get these certain parts filled from someplace else. But I think my love and appreciation for the skills that he does have and the love that he did show and does show for me has gotten bigger.
Beautiful. So this is a perfect segue into kind of the last bit of the different things that have helped you survive and thrive. I know you've talked about your sisterhood and the different people in your life. What else can you say about that?
I remember, I think I said this to you, that I was talking to my ex at one point, and he's like, you just need so much processing time. Like, you're always processing with me. And I was like wide-eyed, and I'm like, you think I'm processing a lot with you? I'm like, I'm giving you 2% of my processing. I am processing all day, all the time with everyone else, and I'm only giving you 2% of it. So in terms of what helped me survive and thrive, my sisters, for sure, because of how much processing and support that I needed throughout this year. Andrea, Touch, May, Sonia, Anastasia, Liz, all women who held me and listened to me and helped me with my external processes. Sophie, who's the artist for the Goddess Temple, the maker of spirit crowns, who has held out the light for me of living in the divine feminine essence of beauty. Sisterhood has held me, cradled me in my sobbing tears and in my full radiance every step of this way. I would not have survived without all of you.
I know alone time too, very important to you. And I think you're less social than you used to be.
Way less social. Yeah. I spent a lot of time alone. I spent a lot of time in contemplation. There's just a spaciousness. Because now I'm listening to spirit of what I'm supposed to do, there's actually a lot of times that I'm not doing anything. But I now know that it's my chance in a way for my internal processing to be happening, where I'm just thinking or resting or recharging. And it's happening behind the scenes. And all of that has been so critical for me to trust all the decisions that I'm making, trust my intuition, that alone time in contemplation. The other thing this year is this podcast. You and I have spent so much time together. A lot, and the podcast itself has allowed me to share more of myself, not only with the Bravehearts, but with my dad and my brother, and feel their love and acceptance of me regarding getting divorced and being poly. And that was a huge, huge gift of now feeling completely just very transparent with both of them. I would also say I've had beautiful brothers show up for me. Spotlight and Max are two men who've helped me see deeper into my wound with the masculine. A big thing is I no longer claim to be feminist, but rather an honor and devotion to the feminine.
Interesting. I didn't know there was that switch for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
In language, just all the time.
Yes.
You are not saying the word feminist.
Yes. Correct.
Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, that phrase isn't about equality. It's about honoring the feminine attributes in myself and in everyone. That when those are honored and revered, the world is a better place. And I know when I was a feminist, what I was really doing was honoring my masculine And I was actually disavowing my own feminine. And what has happened is I now am honoring both the masculine and feminine within myself.
Beautiful. Great. I can't wait to dive into that.
Great. Well, how about we do a podcast on that?
Yeah, we'll do an episode on that. Great. So that's your brotherhood has been important. Anything else?
Family. My willingness to get divorced in the first place and my courage had to do with the fact that my stepson, Zaya, had such an expanded view of the word family that I really felt confident that he would accept me and whoever other partners that I brought into my world. And he's the one I call my spirit son, who I really believe that all of his personal growth that I'm doing is for the legacy of his becoming and of his future children, that I want to be the best person I can be for him and for my grandchildren. I come from a lineage of love and laughter, and that's what I want to leave with my legacy. And that my relationship with Zaya is like a North Star. He's 29, so he's not a young child, but this has been a defining part of navigating, relating as a family, as a chosen family that doesn't look like I thought it was going to look. I want us all to be in ease and grace and supporting. I'm also still in support of my ex-husband's becoming and doing whatever I can for that. But I'm now just doing it if I'm choosing myself first and then in support of everybody else.
Okay. I think I have an idea for our Brave Hearts little assignment for the week. And that is, when you look at your life, is there any love that you're not recognizing? Is there anything you can see, the way that someone shows up for you, the way that someone's serving you, that is in fact love, that maybe you can work on receiving? What about you? Anything?
I'm speaking from a place of more love and more fulfillment and acceptance of who I am, because I have worked really hard to let go of what I thought I was supposed to be. And so if you can just reflect on that, Brave Hearts. Is there a part of you that feels more alive but doesn't fit a definition? And I never would have thought that divorce was going to be the thing that helped me feel more alive.
Thank you for listening.
See you next time.
Do you need permission to be human? You got it. Listen, subscribe, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Learn more about us at permissiontobehuman.live.